Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast in partnership with NUE, that's NUE, where we explore real tools and stories for building mental strength in the modern world.
Margaret Bryden, MBA CMHC, is a therapist, author, and speaker who is passionate about making mental health more accessible. With degrees from the University of California, Berkeley, San Jose State University, and Westminster University, Margaret brings together expertise in psychology, business, and communication to make mental health concepts engaging and practical. She works in both private practice and psychiatric hospital settings, specializing in helping individuals and couples through trauma, addiction recovery, and life transitions. Her debut book, How I Understand It, A Bad Poet's Guide to Mental Health and Resilience, introduces the concept of bad poetry, a therapeutic tool to quiet the inner critic, deepen emotional awareness, and foster meaningful connection. Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast, Margaret.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
So our guest, you write, bad poetry on purpose, by design. You use it to smuggle in some of the most rearranging ideas about mental health we've come across in a while. So I have two examples like this one. I love this. Chasing happiness directly tends to make you less happy. There's research behind that. Or this one. All that time you spend picking apart your own flaws might have nothing to do with your flaws and everything to do with control. Those are pretty good.
Thank you.
So what is a bad poet, and why poetry for mental health?
These are such great questions from the get-go. A bad poet is somebody who values honesty and curiosity. A bad poet is somebody who knows that when something is worth doing, it's worth doing imperfectly.
In your practice, do you ever have your clients write poetry?
Oh yeah, all the time. It's really fun.
And are you familiar with the early work on Dr. James Pennebaker's work on
expressive writing?
Yes.
Expressive writing. He's been a guest on this podcast before, and so our listeners are familiar with
lovely.
him. I know.
He's awesome.
And our listeners are familiar with him and the whole history of expressive writing and everything. So when we first heard about you, it's so interesting because it's such an interesting take on expressive writing. How did you get into this?
By writing poetry and realizing I was bad at it and doing it anyway. I think it's an interesting journey for me with poetry because when I was younger, when I first started out and I was in undergrad and all that, I really didn't get poetry. I thought it was actually quite intimidating and kind of off-putting. And I didn't get it. It made me feel kind of stupid, like there was something maybe that I was missing, and it felt very self-indulgent and luxurious to ponder thoughts about love, like you were trying to solve a riddle or something. And I really just didn't see the practicality of it. I didn't see the practical application of it. And it didn't resonate with me because of that. And I sort of just cast it to the side and went, well, maybe one day, and focused on a lot of other things. And it wasn't until much later in life when I became a therapist that I started appreciating the value of it. And I saw the practicality of it because I saw the research and I saw it in my practice as a therapist, how much it could change a person's whole dynamic.
Interesting.
You mind if I hold up the book to the camera? So I love this. And you talk about how the form of the book is the message. A book about accepting imperfection that is itself deliberately imperfect.
Yes. I would definitely say this is not a perfect book. Purposefully so. And I feel like a lot of what I was trying to do was take the research, take the information that I had, take my experience as a therapist, and not bombard people with more dry textbooks or lengthy explanations about things, but actually just give them what it looks like to do it, give them examples of it. And each poem has a lot of information in it. Aside from the fact that it's a poem, it's infused with mental health frameworks that come up a lot in my work as a therapist that I know have proven effective, that I know that there's research behind.
And you talk about how perfect is paralyzing. Mm-hmm. How does that show up in your clients and from what you've seen?
I mean, anybody who has the notion that they need to be perfect at something will probably experience anxiety and paralysis about that, because perfection is just unattainable. And it's if you're expecting perfection in any dimension of your life, you're probably setting yourself up for some kind of paralysis or failure. So it comes up a lot. And a lot of clients that I see and that I work with, it comes up in everything. And it's everywhere in our lives too. If you think about social media, if you think about the expectations that are put on parents, if you think about work responsibilities, there's a lot of pressure that we feel to meet a very high standard.
Yeah. True.
I mean, you call it bad poetry. I love the framing, and I love the very overt, we're not trying to be perfect, but I have to say it's pretty good.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
And I think that not seeking perfection, I actually, when I lose the perfectionism tendencies, I feel my own self, I actually do better work. Because when you're under a perfectionist lens, you're so worried about judgment, failure, imperfection, that you're not really functioning fully. When you can drop all of that and just do your best work, the work's actually better.
Yeah, it's very freeing to let go of those constraints and let go of these ideals of perfection.
Yeah. So jumping into the writing, what happens? What changes when we put hard stuff into words?
Well, I think that it depends. I mean, if you're talking about working through like a traumatic experience, or if you're talking about working through something that's stressful, I think that a lot changes. There's a sort of I hesitate to use this word, but maybe like a magic that happens. But there's a lot that goes into it, and I think that writing heals. There's something very profound about putting your experiences into some kind of a story that's very healing. And this is not a new concept, and it's not a concept that, researchers are just coming up with now. I think this is something that has been going on since the dawn of time, since we had oral history and oral traditions. Cultures have used song and poetry in order to express themselves and work through difficulties. And I think that we see evidence of that when we look at, poetry from thousands of years ago, like Sufi poets, like Rumi. The poetry that they have written has this sort of enduring power over time that people would describe as healing. And if you look at Greek history, the things that Greeks did with elegies, and like the Odyssey movie is very popular. It's just come out, right?
Yes.
Well, what was the Odyssey? It was a poem that Homer wrote. So these poems have existed since the dawn of time, I think, and people have used them as medicine, as healing throughout history. So this is not a new concept. I don't claim to have come up with this on my own, but this is maybe, my hot take on it that I do feel is very informed by research-based and evidence-based practices.
And you also talk about belonging, right? Take us into the belonging part.
Belonging. Well, what do you mean by that? What are you asking?
It's a part of your framework, right? Is the belonging part of it.
Well, when I think about part of what poetry does a lot of different things. And I think one of the things that it does really well is it helps us connect. It's an art form that serves as a vehicle for connection with people. And when you are able to resonate with art that somebody has created, there is a connection that is formed, and that leads to a deeper understanding, feeling seen, and feeling a sense of belonging. So I think maybe that's what you're referring to.
Yes, like hearing something read out loud for the first time. That's a sense of feeling seen, right?
Yes, I think so. For the works that I have written, when I hear somebody read them out loud, it's been very moving for me.
Yes.
And at first I didn't know what was going on. And then when I thought about it, I realized, I'm being seen and accepted in a way that I wasn't before. And part of what lends itself to that is vulnerability. I think when you write poetry that is about your own life, that is about your own personal experiences, there's inherently a measure of vulnerability in that. And everybody fears vulnerability and wants to protect their vulnerabilities, me included. And when we're able to take our vulnerabilities and channel them into something productive and channel them into an art form that other people could then connect to and resonate with, I do think that that is a very powerful vehicle for connection and belonging that stems from vulnerability. If you don't channel it that way, what could happen is your vulnerability becomes fear for you, and that takes you in a very different direction.
It's interesting. In my undergrad, I studied computer science, so I'm very much a math kind of engineer, science kind of guy. But out of personal interest, I minored in German, and I was never good at English in high school. That was my least favorite subject. But I came to love literature in English through coming first to love it in German. But I started to love like Goethe or Schiller, the German poets, and reading their poetry I found was really calming for me. When I found a poem that resonated with something that I have felt before, it resonated with me. I've never, not I wouldn't say never, but I haven't really put my pen to paper to try to author my own. I'm inspired to do so now, but I just find that like when I read someone else's poem that properly captures something I felt, it's a really awesome feeling.
Yeah, I think poetry has this ability to show us about other people's personal experiences and vulnerabilities. And because poems are very emotive by nature, they're very charged with feelings and with emotion words. And I think emotion is really the glue to our humanity. Everybody's experiences are different, but when we can read or experience somebody else's poetry, we're connecting to the feelings in it, and other people are doing it too. And you realize, oh, people 1,000 years ago were feeling this way, and I'm feeling this way now. Maybe I'm normal. Maybe this is just part of the human experience. And now I have language to talk about something that maybe I didn't have words for before.
Well, we were lucky enough to get an advanced manuscript of your book. We would love to read or have you read just a few poems that we really liked from your book, starting with The Happiness Paradox.
This was probably my favorite one.
I love this. And I took some notes on it even.
Yay. Reading poetry out loud, I feel it really makes it come alive.
Yes.
It's very different. It's a different experience. I work with poetry a lot with my clients, and reading it quietly to yourself is one thing. But when you read it out loud, there's more power to it somehow, or maybe how your infuses it with the intonation and emotion behind it really helps you see it from a different perspective too. So,
yes.
Okay, I will try to read this out loud. It's very terrifying because, it's at the end of the day, it is art. And once you put it out there into the world, it is open to other people's interpretation and however they want to receive it. And they might not receive it with the same intentionality that I wrote it, but here we go. Okay?
Here we go.
The Happiness Paradox. It is well-renowned, studied, and scientifically proven that pursuing happiness directly promptly leads to unhappiness and abundantly. Wanting happiness, working for it, self-defeating, fucking glorious. What is one to do? Look at the reasons why this is true. It has to do with valuing happiness in a way that sets us up for floundering. Our emotional state is perpetually found wanting, when there is no objective way to measure our emotional state relative to ourselves. We will always find the result disappointing. Additionally, we engender loneliness when we pursue activities that lead to individual success to the exclusion of social connectedness. Loneliness being a great predictor of unhappiness. The research on this subject always leaves me saddened about what our culture believes. How did we get the definition of happiness so terribly wrong that the things we do to get it lead to the opposite effect? Eudaimonia is not something that is reached as an end goal in a closed loop inside our heart. In this, Aristotle was very smart. Aristotle said, best to focus on being active, self-actualization, and overall well-being. Happiness is about integrating. To avoid this insidious paradox, focus on gratitude, focus on generativity, focus on the possibility that happiness is not what you think it is. Let that old dysfunctional definition melt into the abyss. Focus on the process of what you do day to day without being attached to the results they generate.
Well done. Now, do you use that poem in your practice with your clients?
I use a lot of the concepts in this poem in my practice, definitely.
I wrote some notes on this poem. I really liked it. And it's very, there's so many, this is the Mental Fitness Podcast. There's so many concepts that we teach and talk about on the Mental Fitness Podcast. But chasing happiness head on many times backfires. The more you measure it, the more you come up short. The way out instead is not head on, but sideways. So gratitude, generativity, connection, process over outcome. Mm-hmm. So happiness isn't a target you hit. It's a byproduct of aiming at other things.
Yes. And there is no way for us to objectively measure our own happiness. I feel like a lot of times when I speak with people, they have this idea that happiness is just this perpetual feeling of ecstasy and also this impermeability that means that you don't have annoyances in life.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the reality is that happiness is not that. That's not realistic. Happiness is more about engaging with the messiness and finding meaning and purpose in how you're engaging. So if you really want to find happiness, you have to look at it as it's always going to be a byproduct of what you're really doing. And what you should really be doing is focusing on chasing meaning, chasing relationships, and chasing curiosity.
Oh, I love it.
So I love talking about happiness. And there are a lot of different things that these different theoretical homes say about happiness. And I've worked with and studied a lot of different theories about happiness based off of these different therapy homes that exist. And these different theoretical homes that people use, it's kind of like looking through humanity through a prism. So every theoretical home is just a different facet of the prism and a different way of looking at things, and they have different language to describe things. But at its core, we're all kind of saying the same thing. And they keep coming back to these same things about chasing meaning, relationships, and curiosity. And if you specifically like ACT therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, the acceptance and commitment therapy would say focus on your goals and focus on your values and focus on chasing and doing behaviors that are in alignment with your goals, because that will help create meaning and purpose in your life, and it'll lead to higher levels of life satisfaction. If you like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, have you guys seen the pyramid? Yep. At the bottom there are things like working on basic safety and food and shelter. And once you get to the top, it's about self-actualization, which is pursuing basically the best version of you that you can create and pursuing your interests, which would be chasing curiosity. And if you believe in Erikson's stages of development, stages of human development, towards your 40s, the stages say that there's this stage that you must go through called generativity versus stagnation. And generativity is about focusing on providing help and wisdom and paving the way for the next generation, and focusing on your community and focusing on the little ones and who's coming next, because that creates high levels of life satisfaction. And many other psychological theories and therapies boil down to the same thing. And if you look at great literary works like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning.
Yes.
He developed logotherapy. And what does logotherapy say? It says, focus on meaningful relationships and love. He calls it love. So focus on love and focus on chasing meaningful work that gives your life a sense of purpose. And he also adds that, the existentialism in there, which is in the face of inevitable suffering, which life will sometimes bring upon us, the knowledge that you get to choose the meaning that you make in your life, that you get to confront that suffering however makes sense to you. You get to make meaning of that. And it's an invitation that he's giving us to write our own story, because we are the narrators of our own story.
I love that.
And I feel like poetry tries really beautifully into all of that.
Yeah, one thing you said remind me, like Arthur Brooks says, the feeling of happiness is evidence that we're living a happy life. But we won't have the feeling of happiness all the time. We can be living a happy life. We can have deep meaning and purpose in our life. And at times we'll have these great feelings of happiness. And then he kind of makes an interesting comment, and he warns that if you seek the feeling of happiness, if your goal is to constantly feel happy, you're probably destined for addiction.
Yeah.
Because
you're always in pursuit of pleasure, you're pleasure seeking.
Right, exactly. And so I think meaning is so much more meaningful. It's deeper. And meaning is better than the feeling of happiness. Meaning is like, it's happiness, but it's I have real purpose here.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's hard times, and hard times come, and so there's just days and seasons where things aren't going great, but we can still have meaning and purpose in those hard seasons.
What about if seeking an action and doing these things? But how does presence, just being present in itself? What's your thoughts on that and how it can?
I think there's a lot of research that shows that mindfulness practices that slow you down and help you be in the present moment, that help you really experience life more fully as it is presently unfolding, that leads to higher levels of life satisfaction and general contentedness with yourself. It's better to live in the present than it is to be in the future or be in the past. If you're constantly thinking about the future or the past, you're probably having some anxiety about it.
Yes. And then if you're not supposed to chase happiness, what do we aim at instead? What are like the foundational things? Is it what you just cited in that poem around that connection?
Meaning, chasing relationships, chasing your curiosity, your interests, and your passions. And I sort of think of these three things as gasoline that you're pouring into your car. The car is your life, and you're pouring the gas of meaning, pursuing love and relationships and connection, and pursuing curiosity. And that's what allows your vehicle to go and your life to move forward so you don't stay stuck or stagnant. And then happiness is sort of like the exhaust that comes out the back. So as you're going, happiness is sort of like,
that's a great analogy.
The tail end. But if you're just focused on the happiness, you're really not able to go because you're outside of your car looking at your exhaust pipe, inhaling a bunch of fumes. That's probably going to make you sick.
That's a really good analogy.
You tie unhappiness to loneliness, to success without connection?
I've seen some research that shows that people who are very goal-oriented and pursuing measures of success in terms of their achievements usually do that at the expense of their social interactions and their social relationships and their love connections. And when people are focused on achieving goals and they're ignoring relationships and things that keep them connected and grounded, their levels of life satisfaction do tend to be lower, and they tend to be lonely. And loneliness is a big predictor of poor mental health outcomes. And it's also a big predictor of early mortality and higher medical issues, higher rates of medical issues.
Yeah, we've seen that. We've talked about that on this and other episodes.
Yeah. So what's the smallest shift for listeners that just heard the happiness paradox, the poem, and we just talked about happiness, and you just said some amazing things and great analogy I loved. The smallest shift this week to stop measuring your own happiness.
Just don't even worry about it. Just focus on something else.
I love it.
How do you not focus? Yeah,
if you really want to be happy, you need to stop focusing on that as your end goal.
Stop seeking it.
And actually search within to something that you're truly interested in, that you're curious about, that you want to know more of, that you want to be involved in, and do that.
And it'll come.
Yeah, it's sort of like sleep in a way. Like, if you're sitting in bed and try to force yourself to go to sleep, you're too worried about sleeping, and your anxiety and overwhelm about it is building so much that it actually really prevents sleeping.
Yes.
But if you create the conditions for it and you have good sleep hygiene, then sleep will come. You don't have to force it. But trying to force it makes it less likely to happen. Happiness is sort of like a visitor that way. You make the conditions for it.
That's great analogy.
And then it comes.
We've had, sorry to cut you off. That's such a great analogy because we've had episodes on sleep. We've had sleep psychologists on who specifically talking sleep say the exact same thing.
Relationship with sleep.
When you focus on sleep, it can actually be counterproductive to your sleep. When you embrace it as like just a good thing and you stop worrying about it, then it comes. It's such a great way to think about happiness. I hadn't even thought about that way either.
Yeah.
All right,
really cool.
let's jump into another one of your poems. We talked earlier just about perfectionism, and one that really stood out to us is My Many Imperfections.
Okay.
How do you feel? You want to read that one for us again?
Let's do it. So here you go. My many imperfections. It's about control. Really, truly. I'd rather live in a world where I have control than live in a world where I definitely don't. And I definitely don't. Really, truly. But I'm not ready to grieve the injustices of my world, and I'm not ready to acknowledge all that hurt. I don't know how I would even begin to if I wanted to, which I don't. Really, truly. So I lean into an illusion that gives me control, one that I learned when I was young, too young to know I was learning how to cope. If I can fixate on all my many imperfections, all the services I should be providing, all the kindnesses I should be lending, all the calories that need restricting, all the fortitudes I lack in my morality and character that need mending. It all amounts to I'm never good enough, basically. All the endless nitpicking at my many imperfections, although painful, protects me from the bigger pain of admitting I can't control the thing I can't look into. Who benefits the most? Really, truly. My many imperfections provide me an illusion of control, a mirage of distraction, an unnecessary toll, a stuckness that keeps me suffering but far from grieving the real issue and moving on. Really, truly. Break free, my love. Oh my gosh, I'm going to cry.
I love that.
I don't think I've read that out loud to other people before.
What does that poem mean to you?
It reminds me of a lot of clients that I've worked with and how painful the situations are.
It's beautiful.
Probably pretty fulfilling when you can help someone to learn to forget or let go of some of those perfectionist tendencies.
It's a difficult task being a therapist. When you are a young therapist, you think, oh, you're going to go out, you're going to help so many people. And then as a more seasoned therapist, you realize that when people are truly ready to heal and to better certain aspects of their life or to address certain conditions, it almost doesn't matter what you say or do, they're going to do it. They're ready. And I think it's been a very humbling process for me to be a therapist. And I think at best, I'm more of a guide that can say, look over here, and let people really pave their own path.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
I know you wrote some notes on this one.
Yeah, I just love that, like, self-criticism is doing a job. Fixating on flaws creates the illusion of control. Like the inner critic isn't attacking you, it's protecting you. It keeps you busy with a problem you think you can fix, so you never sit with the grief of the one you can't.
I mean, what I think I've learned over time in being a therapist, actively working with people, is that we're very clever. Humans are very clever. And when there is a dysfunctional pattern of behavior that we're engaging in, even one that we can see is clearly hurting us, and we know that it's hurting us and we can't stop, it's usually serving more than one function, and we're getting different sort of benefits from it that maybe we're not really ready to look at. But once you start looking at it and looking at what the functions are of that behavior and how it might actually be protecting you in some ways or fulfilling some kind of need that you have in some ways, then things start to change.
I love that line where it says, learned when I was young, too young to know I was learning how to cope. Learn too young to know when we're learning it. What does that look like when that's running the show?
Ooh. It's hard to talk about these things without really talking about specific examples, because every person is so unique. And so one of the things that I worry about is that when I talk about situations or concepts that people will perceive me as just being very reductionistic about things. And I don't want to give that impression at all. So
with that line, learn too young to know we're actually learning that coping, right? What does that look like when that learned behavior is running the show?
A lot of times when people grow up in environments that were less than ideal, that had any sort of abuse or circumstances that were very difficult to deal with, or we're very uncaring. Children are very resourceful, and what they'll do is they'll figure out how to soldier on. They'll figure out what needs to happen in order for them to be able to persevere and not die. We're very adept at surviving, but the coping mechanisms that you learn as children that help you survive certain situations later on as an adult, if you keep doing them, they'll probably cause some sort of dysfunction and pain. So it's usually only later as an adult when you realize, hey, this thing that I'm doing isn't really working for me anymore. Why is that? It's always worked before. And questioning that and then realizing why it was there to begin with is usually a very painful process to uncover. But it is doable and people do it.
Yeah. When you talk about perfectionism protecting us, it's from what? What is it protecting us from?
It's a way to avoid. So anything that you want to avoid, anything, usually it's something like a big pain or something that's uncomfortable, or maybe something that you don't feel empowered to deal with, or something that maybe that you knew that if you were to head on directly and address directly would actually cause you objectively more difficulty. So if you're trying to really avoid something, be a perfectionist.
Wait, is that what you mean by break free, my love?
I think my intention behind that particular line when I was writing it as it pertains to that poem was more about breaking out of cycles of oppression. I believe that we come up with ways of coping with really difficult and oppressive situations. And it can include things like anxiety, or it can include things like eating disorders. It can include all kinds of things. The root of it, when you really look into it, can be being in a very oppressive environment. So breaking free of that environment, realizing what's really happening and taking steps more towards your own freedom can really help resolve mental health conditions.
Yeah. Do we want to do another one?
Yeah, I think this is we wanted to do 3. This is our 3rd.
Yeah.
About not fitting in.
Okay, should I read that one?
Yes, please.
Oh,
You read so much better
I feel
than
is
us.
more like, I feel like this one is like a little bit more controversial for me. Okay.
We'll dive into it after.
I sort of feel like poetry and art, it's a little bit like a joke. In that a joke is also an art form, and a joke can convey lots of interesting information. But and a joke is funny, and that's kind of what makes it engaging. But if you really sit down and like dissect everything that's working about a joke, then it kind of loses a bit of its appeal and luster. So I think we're doing a good job, though.
Okay. Well, we'll try not to get too into it then, I guess.
Okay. About not fitting in. I don't fit in little boxes. I never have. I used to think that was a weakness. It caused me so much pain. Now I'm glad. I'd rather be a proud vegan in a steakhouse than live my life like a carnivorous mouse. I don't fit in closed minds. I never have. I used to think that was a weakness. It caused me so much pain. Now I'm glad. I'd rather be a loud woman, financially free, than live my life like a puppet for others with 2 cents to seize. I know who I am because I never fit in. The pain of the outsider's perspective lent me an objective lens. It forced me to think about how fitting in often means leaving out complexity. Forced me to define myself on my own terms out of necessity. It was painful, but my inner peace is worth more than being tiny, fake, or simple to fit in. I never have. I used to think I was the problem, but the problems are the problems, not me. And I'm glad, with a few drops of bitters for the ease I never had.
Man.
It's good.
I love that second to last line. I used to think I was a problem, but the problems are the problems, not me. You are not the problem is a really important thing for people to internalize. But you may have a problem, but you are not the problem.
With this one, I mean, we can talk about and dissect it, but I was just imagining. So this is autobiographical. This is your experience, I'm assuming.
There are lots of poems that are 100% about me. But there also are a lot of poems that are actually more about what I see as a clinician and what I experience with a lot of clients. And I still write from the first person perspective. So it's actually a little bit ambiguous when you read through all these poems. It's like, is this her? Is this someone else? Let it be ambiguous.
I'll leave it ambiguous. But my thought was, as you were reading and I was listening, just to what we talked about at the very beginning, the whole idea that writing poetry about the things we're dealing with can be healing. And I was just thinking that this could be so freeing and healing. And it was just that thought, that being able to express, going back to Dr. Pennebaker's work, just being able to put into words, and here even a little bit more structured into poetry, just being able to put your ideas into words by itself can be so healing.
Yeah. Well, I want to say maybe a little bit about this idea that the problems are the problems, not me. That's something that I directly reference in my book to a book that came out in 1990 by Michael White and David Epson called Narrative Means to Therapeutic Ends. They basically wrote the original book on narrative therapy, which is kind of one of the wings of one of the therapeutic homes. And one of the key core concepts of narrative therapy is this idea of externalizing, of how you frame, how you speak about yourself, really can make a difference in terms of how you think about things and then how you feel about things. And it can be a very different experience, for example, of saying, I am an anxious person, as opposed to saying, I'm here and anxiety is visiting me right now. It's a very different way of thinking about things and approaching things, and externalizing dysfunction, externalizing dysfunctional patterns of behavior, externalizing problems is a way that really helps us heal. And I hope that is something that's present throughout my book. And it's definitely something that I reference and trace back to narrative therapy, because it can be very, very, very healing to externalize problems and know that you are not, fundamentally broken or different or unlovable, that there are circumstances outside of you that are related to that.
I love that. That's a powerful concept. And even in the beginning, when you talked about hearing a poem read aloud, you could feel seen. There's, you probably interpreted a poem differently, right? When I reading these 3 poems today, there's just little lines here and there that might not be important to someone, but they resonate with me.
Oh, I love that. That makes me so happy.
So
Nothing makes me happier.
Now. I experienced it in this podcast.
I feel very seen.
Everything we talk about on this show, the science, the frameworks, the habits, New is where you actually put it into practice. New is the mental fitness app built to help you reflect, notice patterns, and build real mental strength and capacity over time. It remembers what you're working on and meets you where you are. Not therapy, not toxic positivity, just a daily practice for your mental fitness. If you're watching, scan the QR code on the screen. If you're listening, head to talkwithnew.com. That's talkwithnue.com. What does writing do that reading cannot? And this is a little self-serving question because I mentioned I enjoy reading poetry and I feel inspired to try to start writing.
I think that when you read works that are from other people, it allows you to benefit from their experiences and wisdom and take that in and learn in that way. When you write, you are uncovering your own experiences and wisdom and creating more self-awareness about yourself in that way and discovering your own path and your own journey. And it's just a completely different experience, and it taps into a completely different set of resources for us. And I actually have, I think, about 8 things that I've been able to identify, that I see, that I know about, that I've researched, and that I have experienced myself. 8 different things that happen when we are writing that really makes the experience powerful and empowering and gives us benefits that just reading does not. So is it okay if I talk about them a little
absolutely.
bit? Okay, I'll just kind of run through them.
As soon as you said you had a framework, I got excited.
I was looking for a pen.
Well, it's kind of a mixture of a lot of the different things that I've noticed over time, and that I know that there's a lot of research behind a lot of these different concepts, but poetry kind of brings them all together, and creative writing brings them all together. But poetry, I think, especially, which is why I think I love poetry so much. But the first thing is writing makes you slow down. So the way we think is much, much, much faster than our ability to write or type something. And I've worked with a lot of clients, and I've experienced this myself. When you have something that's going on in your life or a turbulent experience of any kind, and you try to think about it, suddenly you're trying to think about 20 different things at the same time. And that creates overwhelm, and it creates anxiety, and it makes it really difficult to pinpoint what is actually going on right now. But writing makes you slow down. And you can almost think of creative writing as a type of mindfulness experience where you are slowing down and you have to write just as fast as you can write, which is not very fast for most people. And I definitely recommend writing by hand for that reason, because it helps slow you down even more. So first, it slows you down. The second thing that it does is it helps you see things a little bit more objectively. So it takes thoughts and feelings that you have that might be really abstract and difficult to pinpoint to something that's very tangible that you can see that's in front of you. And it's not just inside of you like a crazy tornado anymore. It's something that you can see on a piece of paper that's outside of you. And now that it's outside of you, you can start looking at it a little bit more objectively. It helps create psychological distance. And that psychological distance and seeing it outside of you, that distance helps you engage in metacognition, which is the ability to kind of think and manage your thoughts. So the ability to manage your thoughts, it helps that process if you slow down and start writing things. The other thing that it does is it really helps you engage in structure and organization. So when a lot of people have thoughts and feelings about experiences, especially if those experiences were kind of difficult or traumatic, it's really hard to talk about those things verbally. And it can be helpful to write them out, because you're creating sentences, and even just something like writing a sentence helps you put structure around it. But even more than that, with creative writing and with poems, you're using metaphors and imagery. And there's something really beautiful that happens when you engage metaphors, because when you're using a metaphor, you're taking a set of data and information that you actually understand quite well, and you know the variables about it and how it works, and you're taking that structure and you're overlapping it on top of something that you really don't understand very well right now. And it helps you organize that information. It gives you language to talk about it, and it gives you imagery for you to overlay onto that. And now you understand it, whereas before maybe it was very abstract and amorphous. Now you have something that you're actually talking about. So that helps deepen our understanding of experiences, and it helps us see things from different perspectives. And the ability to engage and see things from different angles, different perspectives, even just when you're trying to choose a metaphor to work with, that ability to engage in different perspectives is called psychological flexibility. And there are lots of studies that show that being able to exercise that muscle of psychological flexibility, being able to see different angles and different perspectives, that really helps engage a person's overall resilience in life.
I have a question. I want you to finish. I don't want to interrupt. But if we just pause it there. That seeing other perspectives is so interesting.
Yeah.
I know you also do couple counseling.
Yeah.
Do you use writing as a tool to help couples see things from other perspectives? I'll tell you where the thought came from. When we were interviewing Dr. James Pennebaker, he talked about early in his marriage, he was going through a dark time with his wife, and he went and sat down in a room and wrote down everything and wrote out why he was feeling the way he was, why she was feeling the way he was. And when he came out of that room, everything made sense. And then they started talking, and they were able to work through things, and he's been married over 50 years. And anyway, that was the thought going through my mind when you were talking about seeing things from other perspectives. I just wondered if that's a tool you've ever used in your
Absolutely.
counseling.
I mean, seeing things from different perspectives is definitely something that I think you need to emphasize in couples therapy, but it's not unique to couples therapy. A lot of times when people come to individual therapy, part of what's feeding the dysfunction is a very narrow way, a very rigid way, a very black and white way of viewing an issue. And part of what people go to therapy for is to get different perspectives on something from a neutral person who they know isn't biased in one way or the other. So, yeah, I think engaging in perspective taking and exercising that muscle, that flexibility is something the more you engage in it, the better you get at it.
Yeah.
And the better you get at it, the more resilient you'll be in life overall when there are setbacks and unfortunate events, which will inevitably happen. Yeah. You're able to then see it from different angles as opposed to just one.
Yeah. Okay. I don't want to. We can go return to the what, and that was number 6.
Psychological flexibility is number 4. Number 5 is that it also helps increase our self-awareness. So when you're writing about experience, you're slowing down, you're seeing what's there, you're being maybe a little bit more objective about it. It allows you to increase your awareness of what is actually going on and what might be the root cause of the issues for you.
That makes sense.
And just even what you're feeling. A lot of times I've engaged in writing exercises with people, and they write poems, and then they read their poems and they go, oh my God, I didn't realize I was feeling that way. I didn't realize how angry I was, or I didn't realize this thing that happened so long ago was actually still bothering me. So you increase your self-awareness when you allow yourself to slow down and write about it. Absolutely. Another thing that I think is really beautiful about poetry is that it helps provide this thing called containment, which is something that therapists talk about a lot. Containment, think of it as a vase or cage, something that you can put something in and leave it there and it's okay. A lot of times when people experience very, very turbulent feelings about things, it's sort of like having a wild animal loose inside of you, and it's just wreaking havoc and causing a lot of problems. But if you're able to talk about that, put structure around it, and put it into a poem, you've provided containment for it. And now suddenly you can look at it, you can see it, and it kind of decharges it. You've taken this wild animal and you've put it in a safe container for our thoughts and experiences. And a poem can just contain a lot of different things like contradictions, ambiguity, the unknown, lots of pain, and it can transform them into art and into something that's really benign. So I've never heard of a poem hurting anybody, but these wild feelings that I have inside of me, I feel like they might hurt me. But if I take them into a poem and I put them there, it provides containment for that. It decharges them.
That container doesn't hurt you, but left alone could hurt you.
Yeah.
Left unpacked.
So it provides containment. Another thing that creative writing does in general, and that narrative therapists would really say and emphasize, is that writing gives you narrative authority. It's this idea that you are the expert on your life, you are the expert on what has happened to you, and only you can really tell your story in a meaningful way. Nobody can do that for you. And when you engage in writing, when you engage in storytelling, when you engage in writing your poem, you're exercising narrative authority, and that in of itself is very empowering. Because you're taking something, an experience that maybe happened to you that you're not so happy about, that you didn't have any control over, and now you're exercising control over it through your narrative authority. So it's empowering in that way. And the last thing on my list that I'll mention is this idea of integration. I use this a lot in poetry. And integration is this idea of taking new information, taking different perspectives, and integrating it and retaining it, putting it into part of your experience repertoire and putting it into your memory by engaging with it. So you're integrating. And I do this a lot in group therapy when I'm working with groups, is after I present some new information, like, for example, maybe I give a presentation about boundaries and what are they and how does that look like and how does that apply to you? And we go over all this new information. And then I'll have people do a poem about it and relate this information to experiences that are currently happening in their life. It helps them integrate new information and apply it practically to themselves and see how that can work, and then receive validation from it in a group environment too. So it helps with integration.
So I was going to ask, I'm really glad you went through that list, because
so all of these things are happening, I would say, simultaneously as you're writing. And the beauty of it is there's lots of research behind all these different things, lots of theory about it, but you don't have to know any of this to benefit from poetry, which is why in my book, I really don't talk about it at all. I just sort of say, here, let's write some bad poetry. This is my bad poetry. Do you want to write some too? You can engage with it and do it and experience all these benefits without knowing any of the science behind it. You don't have to know it in order to benefit from it.
That's well, the question I was going to ask before you went through this list, I'm really glad you did, was what if someone's afraid I'm a bad writer? The title of your book in itself is an answer to that, and bad poetry in itself. It doesn't. It's meant to be imperfect. But the other question I have, all of these benefits, and I'm trying to frame this question correctly. This is the Mental Fitness Podcast, and a lot of what we do is preventative. So, we're helping people build mental fitness and build the capacity to respond to life and normal stresses and everything, and not suppress things before they build up, and they need professional help. People will need professional help in seasons of life. Like, mental fitness isn't going to solve problems. It's just a preventative layer. So these benefits can be done in the realm of mental fitness as well. It doesn't have to be in therapy, correct?
Yeah. I think that part of my mission is to really make mental health more accessible to everybody. Not everybody can afford to go to a fancy therapist.
Yes.
Not everybody has that luxury. Not everybody, even if you have the money, sometimes you just don't have the time. It's very time consuming to go to therapy. And part of the motivation behind my book is to just say, here, you can do this and you can experience so many benefits. And you don't even have to think too hard about it. And you can be bad at it and you can still reap the benefits.
Yeah. And we'll have a link in the show notes of how to pre-order the book. It's coming out September 1st. How else can people reach you? What other, you have a website, or just Google you, or?
If they Google me, they'll probably arrive to my website, which is sageinsighttherapy.com. And if they go to my website and go to the page of the book, they'll actually have a free downloadable bad poetry guide that they can access. That's available to anybody who would like it. And If you try to find me on Facebook, I'm under Sage Insight Therapy, which is the name of my private practice. And I'm also on Instagram at Sage Insight Therapy.
Great. And we'll include links to those in the show notes as well.
Margaret, thank you so much. This was a really beautiful episode. I enjoyed it a lot.
Me too. Yay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's so fun to be able to talk about these things.
Absolutely.
One last thing. If this was useful, please leave us a rating or a review. We read every single one, and more importantly, it helps the algorithm surface this show to people who are actively looking for this kind of content. Mental fitness doesn't get talked about enough. Help us change that.